Hi, this is Dudley Hall with Curriculum Adventures. We're doing another Conversations at the Ranch episode. We are continuing our discussion with Leigh Scarborough. He's doing a magnificent work of pushing back darkness, the darkness of sex trafficking, and he's telling us how he got into it and what he's doing. In this episode, we're going to talk about how his faith is a part of this and how he heard the calling of God. You're going to be excited about it and inspired by it. Don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone, and hit the notification so you'll know when we're going to do another one. So if somebody else is saying, I'd like to make a difference in the world, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do, how would you counsel them?
So there's a couple of things that I would say. I would say, firstly, there are some basic principles that as Christians we need to be doing. We need to be loving our neighbor as ourselves, and that's actually huge. It's really hard for us to do. It's really hard for us to reach out to the person next door, the person that we see at the shops, the person that we see at the gas station. That's a hard step for us, and it's uncomfortable. That'd be one of the things that I would say, hey, are you doing that? Because I think if we're obedient to what God says as the basic principles, then he's going to entrust us with more. I believe that's how God works.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say is that I didn't mention is that I'd been praying the availability prayer for a year before that happened. And the availability prayer, it's just a word that one of my pastors put on this prayer, but it was basically, God, what do you want from me? I will do anything. I will go anywhere. I will give up anything, but what do you want from me?
Yeah.
And so I'd been praying that every single day before this event in Vietnam. Now, when the event in Vietnam happened, I didn't connect the availability prayer to that because it wasn't something that said go. It was just something that said, oh, and then Singapore was when it was the go.
Yeah.
And that was around about a year, almost to the day since I'd been praying that prayer. So I would encourage people to get involved in local ministry, love the people around you, and just continually open your heart to God and say, what for me? What part of the body of Christ am I? Because everyone plays a different role, and that's good, but you need to be open to it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
So does everybody? You think every Christian has a role to play in the mission of pushing back darkness? And
Absolutely. It just looks different. I mean, the rates of suicide and depression now are higher than they've ever been. And where are the Christians that are coming alongside them? There are some, but not enough, And it has to be in a way that doesn't feed into the woke virus. I mean, it has to be in a way that loves people for who they are, but also lifts them up into a place and empowers them rather than enabling them. So we need more Christians to be at the forefront of mental health, at the forefront of eradicating poverty, at the forefront of loving people. We can't be outdone by other people. We have a special grace. When I was doing Bible college in Australia, I did intercultural studies, and the Sikhs, they do community really well.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me a little bit annoyed because I thought, why don't we do it that well? Every single temple of theirs feeds whoever in their congregation is not doing well, and they'll feed them week long. And I just thought, not every church has a food drive, Right. It should be automatic that we know who in our church is struggling and we help them, And so I want to challenge you guys to not let that happen, Every church should be covering the various things, and you're going to have that on your heart if that's what you're meant to do. If you're a person who's like, well, I absolutely love cooking, I have the money to buy the ingredients, well, maybe it's you. Maybe you're the one who's supposed to find out who in your church needs food. And get food to them. It's everybody has a role to play.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in a missionary family.
Yep.
I have met lots of missionaries in my life. One of the things I admire about your parents is that it's obvious if you know them that they are not committed to a cause. They are responding to a call.
Absolutely.
And there's a big difference because all of us have a sense of seeing injustice, and you can't fix every injustice you see.
It's impossible.
And so some people feel like, okay, I'm going to make God happy now by committing myself to this cause. And oftentimes it's motivated by anger rather than by compassion, which I can see why God did that in your heart, because If you're operating in anger, you're operating only in your own strength.
Yes.
Because God doesn't give you strength for anger and vengeance, since that's his job. But if you're operating out of anger, no matter how unjust the injustice is, you're not going to fix it.
Yeah.
And you are going to burn out.
Yep.
And I have run into so many missionaries on the field or back who went to their assignment with, I'm going to go fix this problem. I'm going to go solve this cause. I'm going to respond to this cause. And they get there and they don't have the energy to do it. And they burn out, or they give up, or get disillusioned. So it's important that we know that we are being called, because if I'm being called, if God's calling me, then God is commissioning me. And if God commissions me, he gives me his strength. And you can be sure if you get involved in pushing darkness back, there's going to come a day when you have no strength.
Absolutely.
And you have no idea of how to solve the problem you're facing. And unless you have some kind of intimacy with God himself so that he is energizing you, then you are going to bail out or whatever. I mean, it shouldn't surprise us, because the Apostle Paul said, God gave me this thorn in the flesh, and we don't know what it was, but it was debilitating. And he asked 3 times for God to deliver it, and God said, finally, I'm not going to take it away, but I'm going to give you enough of my strength to overcome it, so that in your weakness, my strength is magnified, so that people don't see how strong Paul is, but how strong his partner is, how strong Jesus is. So I think that is it's an important thing for people to see. But the other thing I want to say to every group I'm with, and that is, you're not necessarily called to do what Leigh has done, but you're called to do something just as important.
Absolutely.
Maybe not as spectacular, but I mean, God did a good job of equipping you. I mean, you had to go through the military 4 times. You had to learn all those languages.
I had a lot of time that I thought, what the heck am I doing? I mean, my brother is a pastor, and he was out there saving souls left, right, and center. And I was like, cool. I was part of getting rid of another terrorist today. I don't know how this plays into the kingdom, but everything that God put me through in the military was contributing to the skill set that I now have. Yeah. And when I came into anti-human trafficking, a lot of people were like, wow, how do you know how to do that? And I'm like, well, actually, that comes back to my training in 2012 when I was, And so there was a lot of things where I really was frustrated, and I would say to God, this is not your mission. I'm not winning anything. I'm just here getting messed around, but absolutely it all contributed, and God was equipping me for what I do now.
Yeah. I always thought that was interesting that Paul, you would think, would be the guy God would say, well, he's really equipped to deal with the Jews, because he was a Jew of the Jews. I mean, he's a Pharisee. He was in the top echelon of Jews. It's like, God will send him to the Jews. And God said, no, I'm sending you to the Gentiles, to those pagans, to those less than people. And I'm going to send you to them. It's like, why? Because, first of all, it takes the compassion of God, because as a Jew, he probably didn't have a lot of compassion toward Gentiles. Like,
probably
don't
not.
touch them, don't mess with them. So it takes God's compassion, but second, it takes God's strength, because now you've got to deal with them. So God is really interested in being a partner with us. But I used to have a friend who'd say, if you'll just walk with Jesus and do what he says, he'll make you look good.
That's pretty cool.
Well, sometimes he does, and sometimes you look really cute. But what he was saying was, you'll be able to do things that you couldn't do.
Yep.
And people go, wow, Leigh, you're able, and that wasn't you.
Yep.
That there was someone behind the scenes doing that whole thing.
Absolutely.